In today's shoot, I'm going to show you how I combine beautiful styling, a set, in-camera creative techniques, lighting, and more for a Jessica Rabbit-themed burlesque shoot. Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and recently I put on a burlesque-themed intensive workshop. And for this workshop, I had 3 gorgeous models, including the one you see here, Minxie Mimieux. And so I had hired Minxie for the workshop, and she sent me some of the pieces that she already had and was performing with, and then some of them that she was creating. And so she sent me a preview of her Jessica Rabbit look, and I died. I was so excited and so inspired, so much so that I actually went back and rewatched Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which, by the way, excellent film, still holds up, and I was super inspired to create this. And so rather than just photographing her, the beautiful hair and the beautiful look, I wanted to create something that looked more like she was performing on a stage. And so in order to have a successful shoot, I needed to combine several elements: beautiful lighting, subtle set design, and a couple creative in-camera effects. So that's what I'm going to show you today. All right, so let's actually begin with our set. Now, in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when Jessica Rabbit actually comes out, I didn't realize this till I went back and watched it. It was a blue set of curtains. But for this, I decided to go with red because it complemented the red lip and her red hair, so I thought it would be a really beautiful contrast. These curtains I bought on Amazon. It's 2 sets of 12-foot tall curtains, and it's just hung on C-stand and C-stand arms. So I could put that to give a little bit of depth to my scene rather than just photographing my subject against a plain background. Now, speaking of the background, I wanted it to fall to darkness, and so behind my subject, I have a Savage Universal Thunder Gray background. Now, I didn't go with black in case I wanted to add a little highlight or see a little bit of separation, but I'm going to make this fall to shadow so it looks as if she is emerging from the curtains. All right, now let's start talking about the lighting. So my vision to make this really theatrical, really cinematic, really dramatic was to have the subject look as if she's standing in a spotlight, a beam of light on stage. And there are several different ways to do this, but there's one key ingredient that you need. In order to actually see a beam of light, you need to have some sort of texture to the air. So you might be able to see that in the environment, we have a little bit of haze. I am running a haze machine. What's great about it is that it doesn't create plumes of smoke or fog in the air, but instead it just puts these little particles that they show up most when backlit. So once we have the haze going, next up is the light modifier itself. Up behind the background, pointed down, we have a Nanlite Projection Attachment with a lens in it. This is the 19-degree lens. And what this does is it creates a beam of light. But because we didn't want her just standing in white light, instead we wanted to lean more into the color theory of that beautiful pink dress, we actually have a purple gel on that spotlight. One of the things you need to be careful with of this projection attachment is that it's quite heavy, it's very bulky, so you need to make sure that you have the correct counterweights. But the benefit of it is that it has a really large lens in the front, so it is going to create a very wide and bright beam of light, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So we're going to turn off all of the other lights and just begin with our spotlight. So you can see how this is giving us a sense of place already. Now, as a tip, because these sorts of modifiers, projection attachments, projectors, spots, all of these, they tend to concentrate light. The lights can get quite hot and even overheat. And so I recommend that when you're shooting them, you shoot the light at a lower power and instead shoot at a wider aperture and a higher ISO. It'll definitely help you out in the production to make sure that you're getting continuous firing and your light doesn't turn off from overheating. Okay, so we have light number 1 to light the scene, and now I want to illuminate my subject. So our second strobe over here on the left-hand side of the frame is a similar sort of modifier, but it's a little different. So the modifier that we have on our second strobe, which is in fact the main light on my subject, is a Westcott optical spot, which I actually designed in conjunction with Westcott. So how this modifier works is part of it attaches to the strobe, and then in the front there is a lens. So those two are very similar in function. I can create beams of light with the optical spot. I can project patterns onto the face. It creates really hard light. I can add gobos to both of these. So what's the difference? The lens of the light above is much larger, and you can create a much broader, wider beam. It can be much brighter. However, it is very heavy and very bulky. Whereas the Westcott optical spot doesn't have as much output, doesn't give quite as crisp beam of light. However, it is very, very light, very compact, and you can put it in a small, lightweight container. So this is why you have to know the right tools for the job, which one is right for you, which is why I have both, and I have several of both. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to add that second light as my main light. And the reason that I've chosen this is because I want another hard light to look like she's standing in a spotlight, but I don't need that beam to cover her. I just need a nice, crisp illumination on her, much like a spotlight on a stage. So we're going to add our main light now. All right, so you can see already this looks beautiful. It looks like a spotlight on her, and I love it. But I am losing a little bit of the bottom of the dress, and it's an incredible dress. So I do think I will want to add some sort of fill light. And so I have many choices of what I could add as fill light, but I've decided on a hard light. And the reason I wanted to do this is I'm going to add a specialty filter later on that requires point sources of light. It requires reflections off of the gemstones, and this is best achieved using a hard light source. A large umbrella or bounce light wouldn't give me the same effect. For our third light, I am adding a zoom reflector, and on it I have a blue gel. And the reason that I wanted to do this is I'm playing with these kind of cool tones. So I have the purple from above, the pink of her dress. The blue is going to help merge that purple and pink. So let's add our fill light. Perfect. All right, so in analyzing this shot, what else is missing? What else do I need to add to the scene? And as I'm looking at the curtains, we went ahead and we bought the curtains, we hung the curtains, it's creating our set, but we're losing them a bit, especially on the left-hand side of the frame. On the right-hand side, you can see it a tiny bit because of spill from the main light, and I like that. I can see some of the texture raking across. I can see a little bit of the red, but it's not quite enough. And so, our final strobe is over to the left-hand side, and I'm going to use it to rake across the curtains, kind of like another spotlight was on the stage, another side light. And that's going to give us more dimension, a little bit more depth. It's going to bring the color into the scene. And so for this light, because I don't want it to spread everywhere, I don't want it to overpower, we are using a grid. Here we have placed a 20-degree grid on a Profoto strobe, and that is going to give me just a kiss of light for some separation. What we're getting is even better than I envisioned, but there's one piece of the equation that I was envisioning in the final shot that I haven't added yet, and that's a little bit more sparkle, a little bit more glitz and glam. And because my main light is a hard light, that Westcott optical spot, and my fill light is a zoom reflector, which is really hard light, this is going to create so many specular reflections off of all of those rhinestones and gems that she has. And that is a perfect opportunity to add a star filter. So I am going to add a 4-point star filter. The reason I'm choosing this is it's very sensitive to reflections. Anytime there's a sparkle, it's going to create a big starburst effect. And so as I add this to the scene, one thing you'll notice is that it may decrease a little contrast. So what I'm going to do later on to counteract some of the haze, to counteract some of the effects of the star filters, I am going to add a little contrast and a little clarity. All right, so let's see what it looks like adding the star filter. We have the beautiful set, the stunning lighting, the incredible model, hair and makeup, all of these things working together. So what I'm going to do now is get that haze machine going and get the shot. And I want poses that are sultry, a little theatrical, a little bit like a performance, because that is exactly the mood I am going for here. All right, let's get it. These images are to die for, and it was really exciting too, because it's great when you have your subject, your model so engaged. She said it was her favorite photos that she had ever had, and it just feels incredible as a photographer to hear that, especially with someone who has a ton of great photos of them. By the way, these images were captured with my go-to combo, the Canon R5 and the Canon RF 24-105. obviously gear is an important part of the equation, right? I had to have the right tools for the job, but in the end, it's much more about what you put in front of your lens to be inspired by, and then you build it up, whether it's through the set, the hair and makeup, the lighting, the color grading, all of that coming together. So if you want to photograph incredible looks and sets like these, I recommend that you go to learnwithlindsay.com and check out the events section, because every single year I have many different photo intensives, including burlesque workshops, and this is the look we just did with Minxie at the one for this year. Now, if you want to see the gear that I used to make this image, be sure to check out the links in the description below, and of course visit adorama.com. Thanks guys for watching, and I will see you next time.